Back. We've got some breaking news. Michael Bauer has put his phone back into his pocket, but what did that little phone tell you just moments ago?
Well, apparently the president will be meeting Tuesday morning with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and current House Minority Leader and soon-to-be Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy.
To see if they can cut a deal to avoid a government shutdown. And what's interesting, I think, from my perspective, is that Schumer's probably more interested in cutting a deal than Pelosi is.
Well, at this particular point, you know, the deal that allegedly was on the table, that both sides allegedly agreed to, that the Democrats say the president backed away from, when it was, you know, the wall for the DACA, the exchange that we talked about, Senator Bauer figured out. The question that I would have at the moment is, he can't say that with anybody because to the Democrats now, because I think Nancy Pelosi, who wants to be reelected as the speaker, and she's got 41 new members of Congress. Right. I don't think they're not going to want to do anything to help Donald Trump.
Well, they're certainly not going to
want to give him the wall because in their mind, we'll find a way on our own time where we'll deal with DACA.
But
we don't
wait
have
a
to
minute.
make that.
Wait a minute. Look at some of the folks that she has been trying to distance her party from that are considered very fringe in their outlooks. Ocasio-Cortez, right? Is that her name?
Omar.
They're all they're a little bit too far out there. And she's been trying to distance her party from that, knowing that it doesn't help them. They need a more centrist Democrat party instead of these fringe elements coming up. So she may want to cut a deal ahead of time so at least they can go out and say, look, we agreed. We got a deal on DACA. We got you what you wanted. Yes, I think she understands that a lot of Americans do want some semblance of a wall, whether it's a physical wall, a wall that's otherwise with more visa.
You think she could go back to San Francisco and explain to her own constituents that she provided money for a wall?
Yes, because when you're an incumbent that long, you've got a lot of political capital to spend, and she can spend that capital on doing this and distancing her party from the fringe elements, which she's been trying to do all of 2018.
No, she hasn't.
We have this great, vibrant struggle within the Democratic Party between progressives and more centrists. But she's not distancing herself from anybody. She's saying you can be a different type of Democrat in different parts of the country. So what works in Texas might not work in...
You can't be a pro-life Democrat. You can't be No, you can't. LePage is the only pro-life Democrat, and you tried to take on a primary.
There are multiple Democrats that are pro-life.
Not in Congress.
And Perez,
there's two. Bob Casey and Joe Manchin.
And Perez,
both pro-life.
The chairman of the party said
Pelosi's
that Pelosi's
party.
Ocasio is the future of our party. So nobody is throwing anybody under the bus here. We are united.
What? Say that again.
Challenge the only pro-life.
You think she's the future of the party?
I said that Perez said that. Tom Perez.
Okay.
Which he did.
Well, so do you agree with him? First of all, why is the chairman of the Democratic Party never on television?
Because he's working with the base.
BS.
Look,
if you're the chairman of the party, you make yourself available. You know why? Because he doesn't look good. He doesn't talk good, and he doesn't look good.
Well, he's winning elections.
Yes, that's true. That's true. There's no question about that.
We won I said it earlier, we won over 90% of the races that Trump played in the Congress. Over 90%.
I want to go back to the issue that we're talking about here, and that is, can Nancy Pelosi now, can she say something that gives Donald Trump, again, they're going to have their meeting this week.
Right.
Can the Democratic leadership on day one walk into their new constituents and say to them, we just made a deal when the Republicans were in control, and we gave the president $5 billion, and we gave a pathway to citizenship for the DACA. Are the DACA people and the Democrats, are they going to be excited because the DACA issue has been done with? and all of these people have a pathway to citizenship, which you've been talking about for years? Or are they going to say, for God's sakes, why did you give that schmuck $5 billion?
I don't think Schumer and Pelosi are in the same place. Schumer's already been quoted as saying he'd give $5 billion for the wall
Yeah. Right.
in return for a deal. But I don't think Pelosi will ever buy into that deal, point blank. I don't think a deal like that could even pass the House, even at its current configuration, because I think there are a number of Republicans who would vote against it for giving protections to persons covered by DACA, and there are a number of Democrats who will vote against it because it funds partial funds the wall.
What matters to us is jobs. We saw GM closing plants. We care about the environment. We care about universal health care. That's a big deal to us. DACA is super important as well. It's not the only thing we care about, though. And there's a lot going on here. We're not going to trade this is a prank almost, this wall thing. No, we don't need a wall. We have a secure border.
You don't
We do
believe
not.
you don't believe that we need a wall.
The majority of Americans don't believe we need a wall.
There's 62 million people
Paying
who
taxes.
Yes, there's 62 million people who believe that we need a wall. Donald Trump was elected because he said he wanted to build a wall.
Well, Donald Trump was elected for a lot of reasons.
That's
He was
a lot of
There,
reasons.
there-
Told a lot of
there was one
stories.
reason,
Told a lot
but
of good
not all
stories.
62 million people
Yeah.
who voted for Donald Trump believe we need to build a wall. Donald Trump was also elected because, first of all, a lot of millions
He was
of people
running against
who voted
Hillary
for him
Clinton.
did not like Hillary Clinton.
That's
That's
right.
true. That's
Right?
true.
Go.
And,
Yeah.
you know, and frankly, I think the issue of the wall, however you want to paint it, whether you're for or against, does not resonate with 100%, even 75% of the electorate.
Different subject. Art Seer. I asked
Bruce.
before whether or not Donald Trump could be tough on Vladimir Putin so that Putin's adventurism can be stopped and that we don't have another Ukraine or the Ukraine thing doesn't turn into a further shooting war.
Yeah.
Do you think Donald Trump has the ability to do that? Or is he too much, is he worried too much that people are going to think he's going to be soft on Putin because of all the discussions of the relationship between he and Russia?
Oh, I'm sure he could be tough enough. The reality is he's been very reluctant to use force. That's another reason why he got elected. He pledged to pull us out of Afghanistan, and he devoted a rather lengthy speech, especially for him, to the nation in some detail for him, explaining why he felt compelled to go along with the forceful military arguments to stay there. I hope and pray that we don't have any kind of shooting war in that part of the world, but keep in mind we're at the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, which broke out precisely around there, in the Balkans, around the Mediterranean.
Jenny,
We do have a very strong alliance, and I don't think even the current Germans would tolerate any kind of aggressive incursion by Russia.
Jeannie, what's your take? You're a captain in the U.S. Army.
At one point, I was,
retired
served in Germany when the wall came down under H.W.
great.
Bush.
Wow.
And went in under Reagan under his whole mantra, peace through strength. We're going to, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. So when, you put action behind words, you get results. And Donald Trump is of the same type. He's going to, send a message and he'll take action if need be. So I don't know. I think that Trump is the right man at the right time as a bulwark against Putin's aggression. And I think if it came to it, he would take a stand, and Putin would know that he's serious about doing something.
We've got to pause. When we come back, another hot spot, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
What's the president going to do there? Are you... Beautiful holiday music for you tonight for the rest of the year. Jeannie, you were going to make a point about the president.
Yeah, going back to the earlier conversation about whether or not he's the right guy to stand up to Putin. I think actually what we're dealing with domestically will tell us a lot about what he can get done as it relates to Putin. Because if he's seen weak on maybe not getting a border wall built, maybe not going for that, then I think that, a man who was known to take action based on the words he said, like in Korea, for example, meeting with them, like with the tariff issues that are going on right now. The guy is standing strong on tariffs until he cuts a deal with China. And you've got this 90-day window now where are you going to get a deal or not? I'm thinking through this. If he doesn't make those things happen, then Putin is going to lose a lot less respect for his ability to get things done. And so that may create a little bit of a problem for him internationally if he doesn't do things domestically.
I think also in looking ahead to 2020, Donald Trump was a phenomenal candidate. He pulled off one of the great upsets, the greatest upset in the history of the country. So what he did in 2016 is remarkable.
Greater than Harry Truman in 48?
Yeah, I think
really?
so. I think so because Truman was at least, the incumbent president at the time. But I'm just saying, you want to argue about that? We can argue about it. But certainly
maybe
Donald
off
Trump,
the
if
air,
he isn't
Bruce.
one, he's number two. I'll defer to you, Art. But my point is, it was because what Donald Trump was saying. It was all about his bravado. It was, and everybody bought into the bravado. They bought into the women. They bought into all the bad stuff that went with him. That he insulted people. He made, he picked on George Bush. He picked on George Herbert Walker. But picked on everybody. Picked on John McCain, and he still won. Okay. And I said earlier, it may be just because it's the degree of hatred that people had for Hillary Clinton. But he did it. Now when he runs in 2020, it's not going to be so much about the rhetoric of what he wants to do. It's going to be the questions about the things that people knew about in 2016. Now they have their own 3.5 years to make an assessment of the guy. Is this a guy who really only hires the best and the brightest? How come his chiefs of staff never stay? All those things that are legitimate criticisms of him that he was able to just swat away in 2016, I don't think he's going to be able to do it in 2020. And part of it is he strong enough to get the wall he said he was going to build? Or is he strong enough to do some of these other things that he said he was going to do? And I just think that at that particular point, the hardline Trump voter is not likely to peel away from him. But I do believe that some Democrats and some independents, maybe in large numbers, and maybe suburban women because of the women issue that he has, I think he has some serious problems because he's not going to be, his own words are going to be used to make an assessment of the guy based on fact, not fiction.
In 2020, it's going to be a presidential election that starts off like most presidential elections. And roughly 40% of the voters are going to vote Democratic. And 40% of the voters are going to vote for the Republican candidate. All right? And give or take a few points. But that's roughly and the fight is always over that other 20%. And however they define themselves and getting them out to vote, motivating them to vote. I think Bill Clinton said this, and he said it so well. The American public would always rather vote for someone who they perceive as strong, even if they see that person as wrong, rather than someone they perceive as weak, even if they see that person as right.
But they don't like a liar. They don't like somebody that breaks
he's
their
not
word.
a liar. He is
what happened to
absolutely not a
GM?
liar.
Look at the plants in Ohio that are shutting down. 20,000 jobs leaving, evaporating. Like those are going to have. And by the way,
why did we bail out GM before?
The yield curve's inverted. The economy's slowing down. You can see it in real estate, and we're moving into recession. Unfortunately, we don't wish for that. But when you go into a recession in an election year, that's bad for the incumbent.
You are sitting as a realtor in Chicago that has the slowest housing market in the nation and has had the slowest housing market in the nation. Exactly. My point is you're dealing with Chicago. That is not what's happening in the rest of the United States. You have to have a broader view here. The economy still is doing much better than it was under Obama at any point.
Yeah, it's got a sugar high.
We're moving to Sam in Austin, Texas. Sam. And but you're listening to us on KTSM out of El Paso? Sam, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to call in and ask the panel a question.
Sure.
And that was with regards to the wall, what do they think the purpose is behind the United States Border Patrol? I mean, why do we have an agency that, and what is the purpose of that agency?
All right, let's let Art start with that.
Well, the purpose is to patrol the border and to maintain its security.
What does that
As you
mean
know.
specifically?
I'm not an expert on the Border Patrol in detail, but they certainly do literally patrol the border, and thanks to electronic
For
surveillance.
what purpose? For what purpose,
To
though?
keep people out who are trying to sneak into the United States.
What's your point, sir?
Exactly.
Capture.
So
We
do
have
you,
to
do you
keep
think if you
contraband
don't
out.
think
Let
we
him
should have
finish.
a wall?
Go
No, if
ahead.
you don't think we should have a wall, then I think that you should be against the Border Patrol as well.
Not if
Same
they're doing
thinking.
not if they're doing a good job.
They can't do the job. There's too many people trying to get into America illegally.
Okay.
Right. And he's also, you're making the point, is you have some Democrats, not all, you have some Democrats who think they haven't called for the end of the Border Patrol, but they've called for the end of ICE, the enforcement, another part of the enforcement of Border Patrol.
Right.
Again,
It's kind
how
of like
do you
this.
feel about that,
We want to have our
Roberto?
speed limits, but everybody wants to speed.
No, that's a good point.
Can you repeat that, Sam?
With regards to the border, it's a dangerous policy. It's one thing to do that with 5-10 miles an hour over the speed limit, but it's another thing to do that with illegal aliens coming over here, having children who then go on a federal grant for 18 years of their life with a brand new American Social Security number and citizen to go along with it.
What's your answer to that, Roberto?
So, Sam, thanks for that. I was stationed in San Antonio. It's a great town. I missed the brisket. My answer to that is that we spend more money on Border Patrol than we do on the FBI or ATF. And I think that there's an important role that they play, but it's become a prop politically. And, for example, with the endorsement during the campaign, that was the first time that ever happened. I want to be clear that
What's wrong with that?
Democrats are not saying that we don't need to control our borders. What we're saying is that we need smarter policies that are responsive to the needs of our economy, to our place in the world as a beacon of light.
Well, what would you
What
do
should
then?
happen?
What
What
would you
should happen to
do?
people who break the law?
Right.
What would you do to
What's a
people who
smarter
break the
policy
law?
of not
We would
allowing
enforce
people to come
prosecutorial
across?
discretion. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I just wanted to know. Unfortunately, the circumstance of coming across the border illegally or legally is a black and white issue. It really is. And we want to act like there's nuances to it, and you want to say we need to do it smarter. But the fact of the matter is, it just needs to be done. And it's unfortunate that people want to flee a country where things are so bad that they want to break the law to come into this country to find a better life. However, it doesn't work that way. If those people were marching towards our border, screaming about how they want to make their own country better, I'd want to listen to everything they have to say. But all they're looking for are handouts from politicians that encourage that.
Well,
this whole thing has been encouraged by the promises of politicians. I'm not going to use the Republican or Democrat label on any of them. And politicians are the ones that are not just, they don't want to be the bad guy. And unfortunately, we have this loudmouth president that stands up and wants to be the bad guy and is willing to say things that no politician has wanted to say for 30 years.
Respectfully, Sam, we're a nation of immigrants. Immigrants contribute to this country. They're not here for a handout. They're here looking for work.
Legal. What is wrong with Democrats that can't separate
when-
legal immigration
It's not
from
about
illegal?
immigration.
Look at
It's
the
a
port.
disrespect for law.
Port of San Isidro.
It's about
Okay, they
breaking the law to
came where they
get
were
here.
supposed to
It's not
come,
about-
asking for asylum, and they shut down the port. They came to the legal place, followed all the rules, and that's totally within the rules for
They
asylum.
passed through Mexico first, though, and they should have
What-
stopped in
they-
Mexico
they-
because that's the way the UN
Mexico
looks
has
at
a
asylum.
a
That's
long
fine.
history of
Mexico
caring for
offered them
caravans.
asylum. They
Most of
offered a lot
Mexicans
of
are
them.
Catholics. We gave them food. We gave them shelter. I happen to be Mexican of descent. However, when they got to the legal port of entry and legally asked for asylum, it threw our president for a loop.
But international relations, it's the first country you go to when you ask for asylum. They should have asked for asylum in Mexico. Mexico didn't enforce their asylum laws. And you're a Mexican. You're American.
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Why aren't you upset with them? Why isn't Mexico doing more to solve this problem? Why is it our problem?
Well, I'll tell you why. We have a duty, I think, to pay attention to this. A lot of the policies of our country, unfortunately, have destabilized regions that are now in turmoil, that are like Honduras, for example.
Such as
Honduras, Nicaragua.
What have we done?
What
have we done wrong?
School of the Americas, supporting dictators, and we've had a very difficult relationship.
Giving the
with-
United States entirely too much credit for the instability, corruption, and violence of other countries in the world. We do have a right to pursue our national security interests, but you're going way overboard to blame the United States for these vast problems south of the border.
We've got to pause. Sam, thanks for your call. We're going to be back. We're going to continue this discussion on the other side of this commercial break. From coast to coast and border to border and around the world on Beyond the Beltway, I'm Bruce Dumont. Bruce Dumont back, and we're dealing with the issue of
That's a red herring.
those from Central America who are coming to the United States, and they're being held at the border. And the question is, what can we do to deal with this group of people that would like to come to the United States? And again, if they seek asylum, there's a long process, and a lot of people are concerned that during that long process, they get lost. They get lost in America, and we never track them down.
So one of the questions that we should be asking, by the way, that I never see anyone asking, is why is there such a long process to determine the validity of someone's application for political asylum? Why does this process go on not just for months, but for years? You know, this is like the old DMV where you used to get your driver's license renewed, and you'd have to take a whole day off of work because it took you all day to get a driver's license renewed. Mm-hmm. And now in Illinois, it takes you 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Immigrants are
because
important.
we fixed the system.
We need them for construction, for agriculture, for hospitality, for transportation.
How many do we need?
You know, the market will decide. When they and immigration, by the way, is at a record low.
How many people from Central America? What's the right number to let into the United States, in your view?
You know, I don't know.
Is it
By the way, we
15,000?
take in on average, and that last year was a little low, on average, we take in 1 million legal immigrants a year on average. Okay, that's a significant number, and it's more than any other country allows in. And you look what's happening in Central Europe. They are literally building walls around their countries to protect their borders and keep immigrants out. So because
That's
it's
not
much
good
more
for
fluid there.
markets.
That's much more fluid there. That's what they've decided to do. My point is that we're a very generous nation. We take in 1 million legal immigrants, and if you want to come here, you need to come here legally. Now, the idea of political asylum, why does it take?
Right.
Well, on average, it takes 2 years to vet a refugee and have them come over through refugee status. But why? Because it's a very serious thing that we do when we look at asylum. There's you have to
It actually takes-
validate.
and
You have to
those-
validate the what's happening in terms of their persecution. Is it religious? Is it political? And that takes. And you've got lawless societies for which it's very difficult to make these checks. So we can't expect. I would suspect that if you were able to give political asylum or religious asylum in less than 3 months, well, what type of vetting did you really do?
It actually
These
takes
are
more than 10
very
years
complicated.
to petition
Well,
for a sibling.
I mean-
Yeah,
More than
no,
10 years.
no,
It does, absolutely.
no.
It takes
What
more
the-
than 10 years for
It's
you to
about
ask
2.5 years.
No.
We had the expert on from World Relief
for
talking about
a
refugees.
citizen, for his or her
About
wife,
2.5
perhaps.
years.
Well, the point that the president was talking about was also having the whole process of review taking place in Mexico. The processing is done there. It's a joint U.S.-Mexican thing, but they're not on the border. Now, does everybody think that's a good idea?
But that's not in compliance with U.S. law.
The law says if you're here and you ask for help,
Should the law be changed to deal with the administrative situation that we have
court
now?
says
We
the president
can't
cannot
deal
do
with them
that.
fast
They
enough.
came over by busting down a gate. Everybody saw it. busting down a
Because
gate
they closed down
at
the
the
ports of
Mexico.
entry.
Because we broke our own laws.
No,
Because we're
no,
letting
I'm
in
talking
100
about.
people a day.
I am
Let me
talking
ask
about
another
the
question.
gate on the southern border of
Should-
Mexico that
Should
they
this,
broke
yes,
down.
should this, you're
2,000
right.
miles from the U.S. border.
So then they should have asked for asylum.
They snuck into Mexico.
That's right.
Right.
They broke laws. They fought. They had to use tear gas down there
No,
to
breaking
stop
breaking
them.
laws. It's not like they committed murder. They're here because they're looking for
So
an
you-
opportunity
you-
to not
so
die.
you-
The-
So
the
what other
position
laws
of the
should we not
Democratic Party,
enforce?
yeah, you
What
don't
other
care
laws?
about lawbreakers.
Just give me the
You
list.
just don't.
What other laws should we not enforce? I'm making a
My
list.
opinion is that you can do this in a way that's orderly and just.
It's not
is it?
orderly
In
to break
accordance-
the
in
law.
accordance-
What is
Look,
it?
The president wanted to spend $200 billion
What do you wanna
to
do?
put the army down there.
What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
It's just, you know
What is it?
For
No,
a fraction
what
of the
is it?
cost, I'm
What
telling
is
you,
a
I'm telling you.
democratic
For a
answer to
fraction
this
of the
question?
cost, we could have sent Department of Human Services down there and processed everybody orderly, maintained the port
Down
open.
where?
Down to the border, maintained, done proper vetting. Like, there's no way that we can't process the people that are showing up. It's impossible.
Could we process them in their home country?
You're kidding me. There were a number of minor children sent over with people that
Biometrics,
were not their parent.
That's
They
why we
were
have
not
biometrics.
their relative. And you think that we could vet them
Look,
and
when we did
adequately?
Ellis Island,
No.
it was a question of that day. You were off the boat, you're on the island, and you're in the U.S. Why does it take years now?
And you know what else we did? We actually sent people back because they didn't fit our medical standards, or otherwise we're not going to be
Anybody that
successful
marched
here.
for days and days
Just
across
saying,
the desert
I'm just
is
saying you
probably
cannot,
fit to be here and be a productive member of our
You cannot
society.
compare the two.
I can't.
Different circumstances.
Why?
Why? Because these don't look like us?
No, not at all. That's not the case at all.
Educate me.
I'm telling you, you go to Ellis Island, you watch what they went through, and they actually did pull people out for all sorts of reasons and send them back because they did not meet standards. And you can't.
What percentage of that would you say that was?
I don't know. I'll have
Less
to
than
check.
10%, maybe?
Could be.
You know what?
But they
Okay.
were coming legally. They were coming
That is
legally
not
on
what
top
America
of
is
it.
about.
Jeannie,
On top of
let me-
I'm
let me
sorry,
just-
they were
okay.
coming legally. They were legally.
There were no laws back
processed.
then. It's not legal versus illegal. It's a whole different ballgame.
Here's the thing. But when you say
There
something,
were laws back then. That's why they went to Ellis
It was
Island and were
Roberto,
processed.
when you say that's not what America is about,
Correct.
I say to 62 million people, they want to define what America is about. Their definition of America is don't let everybody in that wants to come in, because there are hundreds of thousands of people in Central America who aren't in yet. They're getting ready for the next caravan. And at what point do we as Americans say, you know what, enough is enough? We can't take everybody that wants to be here.
So how do we differentiate? And we were talking about this during the break, between persons who are fleeing death threats, persecution, personal persecution, religious persecution, etc., versus persons who are looking for better economic conditions. Because those are two different categories of
Yes.
persons. It's easy for me to say that.
Yes.
I actually don't know how do you separate those two from each other, but somehow we have to be able to, as a society, figure this out.
Well, doesn't the fact that somebody would get into the United States, doesn't it mean, for the most part, that their economic condition would improve over where they're coming from?
Yes.
So they may not
Absolutely.
say that we're coming there. Here's a good example. Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
for those listening around the country, you're one of the leading spokesmen in the Midwest for gay and lesbian issues. You have been for most of your adult life.
Yes.
What is the position and what is the stature of gays and lesbians in Central America? Because not much has been said
Yes.
whether or not in this caravan there are people who feel persecuted because of their sexual preference. You don't hear much about that.
Actually, what was interesting is the first caravan that came to Tijuana, the first 100 people were primarily gay and lesbian people, who made it to Tijuana, who tried presenting themselves at a port of entry. So there is a great deal of persecution.
Was it because they were persecuted, or did they just want a better life in the United States?
They'll be killed in Honduras.
Well, I think many of them claimed that their lives were threatened because of their sexual orientation. Whether that is true or not, I'm not a fact finder. I didn't interview them. But if their claim is validated, does that give them grounds for political asylum in the United States? I would argue that it does.
Okay, so let me broaden the question. If that is a reason that someone is being persecuted in Central America, you know that gay and lesbians are being persecuted in many countries of the world, in the Middle East, in Russia, in Ukraine. Does every gay and lesbian who's being persecuted in their country, should they have a right to come to the United States where they will be treated fairly?
Why would we disadvantage them versus anybody else that's going to get killed?
I want to ask Michael that question.
Well, you're asking me where I draw the line. That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
And by the way,
how
I'm
many
the first one to tell you that I don't know where you draw the line.
Yeah,
But somehow you can't have this as a black or white issue. You can't say we're not going to let anyone in, and you can't say we're going to let everyone in. So it's actually, we want simple answers to an extremely complicated
Yes.
problem.
The courts have said the president doesn't have the power to shut down the port, and he has to follow the law, and that's what we're going to do.
Art, do you have any, do you weigh in with any suggestion here? This is a very complex issue. What is a way to deal with it that maybe we're not thinking about?
Keep in mind that the problem is so many people want to come to the United States of America. No other country in the world has this kind of problem.
Right.
People from Asia and North Africa especially want to go to Europe, but it's not like this country, serving as a beacon of light. Reagan made that important speech in Germany as a cognate to his emphasis on the fact that anyone can become a citizen of the United States. It was also very careful to tell advisors, make sure we handle this so nobody thinks of JFK. It's a continuing refrain in American politics, and we should feel good about that.
Is there a larger
Since it's
role
so
for Canada?
Excuse me,
Go.
since it's, to answer your question
Okay.
further, since it's such, and thank you for asking, it's such a confusing issue, why don't we emphasize the orderly process by which people become legal residents of this country? We are, in effect, penalizing the people that follow the law and follow due process when we give this tremendous emphasis, and both the president and the media collectively are guilty of giving tremendous emphasis to only one section of the challenge, illegal immigrants. I think the president, since I'm very upset by a lot of things he says and does as candidate and president, I think his suggestion of vetting people south of the border and collaborating with the government of Mexico is actually a good, constructive idea. He has a lot of bad ones.
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you for
I also
asking.
think they should coordinate on building some prisons that deal with those who violate our immigration law. I'm Bruce Dumont, back shortly. Bruce Dumont back in Chicago. Thank you very much for joining us. Michael, button up the story that you were referencing. This was in World War II.
It was before World War
Before
II.
World
It was
War
in
II.
November of 1938.
Explain what the story is and how it ended.
Right after the Kristallnacht pogrom in Germany, some 900 plus Jews boarded a ship to St. Louis in Hamburg, Germany, set sail for North America, first went to Cuba to try to get admission. They were all illegal. None of them had visas to get to the United States. Cuba would not let them in. Several of the passengers actually jumped overboard to commit suicide to try to draw attention to the plight of their fellow passengers. They tried getting to the United States. Roosevelt wouldn't let them in. They tried going to Canada. Canada would not let them in. Eventually, the ship's captain returned back to Hamburg, where at least a third of the passengers ended up dying in concentration camps. And that's an extreme example. I recognize that. But keep in mind, in 1938, they were not fleeing extermination. The Nazi plans for extermination came years later. They were fleeing persecution because they were being persecuted as Jews.
And your point is?
We had a moral failure then, and echoes now.
Well, that's an extreme example of why you want to have political asylum. They should have received political asylum, and I think we all recognize that there was a mistake.
So
by
we
the
have the
United States.
Vietnamese boat lift, right?
Right.
brought those folks in.
the
We've
question
done this
becomes,
througart history.
Art,
And
my
to our
problem is,
benefit. It's in our
Where do we
interest.
draw the line? And I keep asking that question because I don't know the right answer where we draw the line, but I know it's not a black or white issue. We need to figure out how we draw the line logically.
Why is
we
why
do
is
what we can to keep other countries from turning into another Third Reich.
Yes.
That's one lesson,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Economic development
Yes.
and investment, which also includes the rule of law. That's
Yes.
one lesson from
Okay.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's one thing that we should be doing.
Why is it? Let me ask you, why is it that so many Democrats and so many Jews revere Franklin Delano Roosevelt? If Donald Trump had done that, or if Donald Trump were to do something, the response would be every student in every school would know about it. Why is that piece of the Roosevelt legacy not held in a different, or is it that I don't know about?
Well, I actually think it is. I think many Jews view that as a stain on the FDR legacy. That is a very strong legacy. That at least he engaged. He had a isolationist Congress, and he engaged in land lease to try to give the British weapons and ships and planes to be able to fight. And eventually, after Pearl Harbor, we entered the war. But and there was, of course, a lot of New Deal legislation that Jews, being more liberal, were very sympathetic to. But I think the St. Louis and the refusal to allow in refugees. There was an effort in 1940 to pass a bill that died letting in 10,000 Jewish children from Germany, just Jewish children, and the Senate wouldn't pass the bill. So it is a stain on the legacy of FDR.
Here's a question, by the way. We're getting questions coming in via the internet. Why is the American media showing more outrage over the murder of non-citizen Khashoggi than Ambassador Chris Stevens? Art Sear, let's broaden the question and talk about
This is really
what do we do with Saudi Arabia.
This is really all right. This is really a different, separate question. I think there was a lot of outrage and a lot of political debate in this country, as well as moral discussion about Chris Stevens.
Not by the media.
Not by the media.
Not by the media.
Not by the media. I agree with
Chris
that.
Stevens was a Republican-led and fed outrage. It was not picked up by the national news media in any way because it was an embarrassment to Hillary Clinton.
Well,
But
that's
my broader question.
And
That's your
Barack Obama, by the way.
That's your opinion. My opinion is there was an extensive discussion in the media. There was an effort by the Republicans to politicize it. And there's still a lot of disagreement about exactly just what went on where. Accusations that somehow the Secretary of State prevented a military rescue of an ambassador who shouldn't have been where he was didn't get traction. I think the lesson of, I'm not quite sure what your question is, but in terms of Saudi Arabia, I think it shows actually that you can't get away with murder, even if you're a feudal warlord and gangster,
So
the way
what
you
should we do?
used to. I think we should distance ourselves from Saudi Arabia. I think we should use our strategic leverage in a disciplined way, and as did President G.H.W. Bush and James Baker throughout that administration. We should put pressure on different countries in the Middle East. But we're now a net exporter, not just of finished gasoline, but of oil products. It's one big reason the price is so low. We don't need the Saudis the way we used to.
Okay. So you do not think there would be any retaliation that would hurt the American gasoline user?
We hurt them. I mean, their retaliation would hurt their economy more than it would hurt us at this point.
Yeah, I
so
think we
need
have
to
an
sell
interest.
their
We
oil.
could be tough. We could be tough
Yeah.
with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we also need them as a military ally if we can, within acceptable moral boundaries, do that. I don't think the president should be talking the way he does. When you're president of the United States, there are a lot of things you don't have to talk about. I wish he'd kept his mouth shut, condemned the murder and kept his mouth shut about our need to work with Saudi Arabia.
But also, what about when the Saudi prince is doing high fives with Vladimir Putin? Should we be worried about the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Russia?
Well, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah,
Yes.
Putin has done a remarkable job of establishing regional leadership and, I believe, diplomatic dominance in the Mideast. We shouldn't just be fretting and worrying about it. We should have sustained, disciplined foreign policies, as previous presidents have had, not lately.
Let's go to Roger in Austin, listening to us on KLBJ. Go ahead. Roger, you there?
I'm here.
You know what? I put you on too late. I apologize for that. That's my mistake.
Well,
Next week, call me
got-
back. You'll be our first caller next week, I promise. But our thanks to our guests, Michael Bauer, Roberto Montano, thank you very much. Art Sear from Carthage College,
Thank you.
Jeannie Ives, thank you very much. This program is a Genevieve production, and our thanks to Fritz Goldman and Sam Greenberg and Dan Dorfman for their assistance in the production of the show.
And let's
I'm
thank
Bruce
Roger.
Dumont. Good night from Chicago.